Alright, so we're here for the weekend video, and that's what I'm gonna call it because Friday video is not really working out. Some Fridays I end up busy, but I'll always have a weekend video. Friday, Saturday, or Sunday, you'll have a ramble/rant video. While I'm talking, you're going to see the disclaimer pop up on the screen, as always for the RambleRant videos. Don't forget, I'm a human being. Sometimes my mind will change over time, and I don't always hold the same opinions and positions I do now. If you look at me in middle school versus me now versus me in 20 years, I'm sure you're going to see me in middle school versus now is obviously different, but policies between even now and 20 years from now that I may support or not support might change. So don't tie me to what you see now. Now, for the foreseeable near future, yes, this is me, and right now, obviously, this is me. But do know, again, minds do change. All right, well, let's get to the actual video then. So here you can see this video is who I am voting for and why. So I figured it'd be kind of cool to go over a few things when it comes to these three candidates that you see on the screen. President Donald J. Trump, Joe Jorgensen, and previous Vice President and Senator Joe Biden. And I'm going to talk a little bit about each candidate. We are going to look at a few things, and there's a few things we're also not going to talk about that I think might be important issues to some people, and some of them even are important issues to me. But to me, the most important issues when it comes to looking at a presidential candidate that you want to vote for are: what were their accomplishments in office, if applicable, of course, and what are their policies. Everything else is just extra, but those are the two most important things to me. So those are the two things we're going to look at. So let's go ahead and look and see what we're not going to be covering. We're not going to be talking about President Trump's personality. That's something I don't really care about, and I know some people hate it, some people love it, some people are indifferent. But I don't think that should matter when looking at a president. We're not going to be talking about Biden's plausible dementia. I do think he has dementia, but whether you agree with me or not on that, it doesn't matter because we're not going to be talking about that. I do think that is an important issue, but we're not going to be talking about it in today's video. We're also not going to be talking about a lot of Biden's gaffes or even some of Trump's gaffes. I do think that Biden's are way more apparent and way more numerous, but we're not going to be talking about anybody's gaffes in this video. We also won't be talking about the riots going on right now, which I do think are very important as well. There are a few peaceful protests out there, even many peaceful protests, but there are also many riots out there. And the riots are a big issue for some people, and myself included, but we won't be talking about those today. And we also won't be talking about the party platforms themselves. You'll see an asterisk there. There's kind of an exception to that. When it's brought up in the candidate's policy, then yes, we of course will talk about those party platforms, but in a general sense we won't be talking about party platforms. So those are the things we will not be going over. So let's go ahead and start with the accomplishments while in office. We're going to start with Biden's accomplishments, and they're kind of interesting. You're going to see that there are some that I do think are good accomplishments and some that are not. Let me rephrase that. There's one that I do think is a good accomplishment, and then some that are not. So the first one is actually he's responsible for the Ginsburg rule. And I do think that this was actually a kind of good thing that Biden did. And if you don't know what the Ginsburg rule is, it was kind of that, I'm going to say this in layman's terms, it was that court appointees cannot be expected to comment on how they would rule. So if you're appointed to a court and you're in the Senate, or in the Senate is asking you questions, you can't be expected to be able to respond to how you would rule on certain cases, if that's the type of question that you are being asked. Now, what's interesting is the very next thing that I have as an accomplishment is responsible for borking. And borking is kind of interesting because it's when you kind of I'm going to go ahead and directly read it to you, the definition here. So the term borking came from the appointed judge who was not confirmed, and that is, I believe it's Robert Bork. Yes, Robert Bork is his name. And so this term became borking, and it was when Joe Biden claimed that he was going to be very fair in his questioning to Bork, and in doing so he was not fair. And he kind of portrayed Bork as a wide-eyed Puritan who was going to break down bedroom doors and kind of hurt people and invade their privacy. Here's a little snippet from the Washington Post at the time. While claiming that Judge Bork will have a full and fair hearing, Senator Joseph Biden this week has pledged to civil rights groups that he will lead the opposition to the confirmation, as the Queen of Hearts said to Alice, sentence first, verdict afterwards. How can he possibly get a fair hearing from Biden, who has already cast himself as the role of prosecutor instead of juror in the Judiciary Committee? If there is a strong, serious case to be argued against Judge Bork, why do so many Democrats seem unwilling to make it and afraid to listen to the other side? So that's where the term Borking came from, and Joe Biden was the one who introduced that. So next was the Iraq War. Biden actually supported the Iraq War, and then he flipped on that position in 2005, and he lied about his resistance to the war. So kind of I understand, you change your mind over time, just like I said on my disclaimer here, but the fact about lying about changing his mind. Next, he supported Russia. He called Russia a friend in 2012, and he was a big part of giving the control of Syria to Russia, which then created issues in Crimea. So it's really interesting to see how, all the Russia hoax and how Russia is so horrible now. And, just 8 years ago, calling Russia a friend and kind of poking fun at then candidate Romney for saying that Russia was not a friend and was a threat. So that's really interesting. And of course, he pushed the Iran deal, which we know was not great for America at all and created a lot of issues in Iran itself. So I have some more things, so we're just going to get rid of these and continue down the list. So next, he actually opposed the killing of bin Laden, which is interesting because it's something that happened under his leader, Obama. Next, he said that China was not competition to the United States and that they were really doing nothing wrong, which is interesting. He also said he would have never moved the U.S. Embassy to Israel to Jerusalem. This one's kind of not fair to bring up because I said these are all things I did while in office. This is a more recent thing, but kind of ties back to all the promises made by people to put the U.S. Embassy in Jerusalem. And he said now that he would have never have moved it, but he would not remove it. So that's, I guess, worth saying. He helped pass Obamacare, which was quite a disaster, and raised a lot of premiums for a lot of people, and then made it so that people could not have health care. So if you wanted to say, hey, I don't want health insurance, you were struck with a fee. He supported the assault weapons ban in 1993. Obviously an issue. He drafted, not just supported, he actually wrote the Senate version of the 1994 crime bill, which put a bunch of low-level crimes such as people using some drugs and people doing small petty things, became very harsh on them for that. And it's interesting because he even backed it up in 2016 where he said he still supported it. And it wasn't until 2019 that he said it was a mistake. So again, people change their minds, but that really, it's so strange that, it was just last year that he turned away from it after really pushing it and drafting it himself. That seems like he's being pressured by people. So I don't know. He also supported the Patriot Act, which I'm not a big fan of. And he's known for his rampant plagiarism, which can be seen in several of his speeches, both old and new. So that is that. And that's all I have for the VP/Senator Biden accomplishments. Whether you see them as positive or negative, I'll leave that up to you. You obviously heard my opinion on those, but those are his accomplishments. Let's go ahead and let's move over to President Trump accomplishments. So there's actually a lot I have to go through here. So I'll try and make them quick. But the first one are the tax cuts. So the tax cuts are really interesting. Some people like to say they were just for the rich people. Well, they actually helped small businesses a lot. And small businesses were able to flourish. And we actually saw that at the State of the Union address where he talked about that and showed some of those small businesses. And I've seen it, the small businesses around here, around my town. The corporate tax rates. A lot of people don't like this because they don't understand. I believe it was 35 down to 21. Don't quote me on that exactly, but I think those are the correct numbers. But this helps a lot because it allows them to be able to hire more people and invest into more innovation. But the biggest one is job growth there. And then I want to talk about my taxes. So this is a story I always tell people when they bring up the tax cuts and how they're just breadcrumbs. These were not breadcrumbs to me. The tax cuts happened during my first year of teaching, and I was not making a lot of money. I'm trying to remember. Forgive me for not remembering the exact number. I was either making $25,000 a year or $26,000 a year. That's not a lot of money, but it was enough to get by, but just barely. So making that very little amount of money, $25,000 or $26,000, the tax cuts happened, and it ended up allowing me to take home. I was still making the same amount, but take home an extra $500 a year. Now, $500, when you're making that small amount of money, $500 is a lot of money. For me, that was a whole month's worth of rent. And so being able to say, hey, I got this extra $500, I can put it towards a month's worth of rent. And now I have $500 I can spend on something else instead of rent, because that month is covered. It wasn't, all at one time, but think about it like that. Spread out, $500 is a lot of money. So that's not breadcrumbs, especially when you're making that small amount of money. First year teaching, you're struggling through everything. $500 because of tax cuts. That was a big deal to me, and still is. Next thing, repeal the Obamacare individual mandate. Still a lot of issues with repealing Obamacare overall, and that's a whole debate in itself, but it is widely agreed upon that the individual mandate was the worst part of it, or at least one of the worst parts of it. And that's the part I just talked about, where you would have a fine against you, a fee against you, if you did not have any health insurance. Some people just don't want health insurance. So that was a good thing. New jobs and lowered unemployment. Unemployment continued to go down. It spiked up, of course, around COVID time and has since dropped a bit, not to where it was, but it looks like if President Trump is reelected and things continue on a good path, it will continue to drop even lower than it was before. We were getting as low as in the 3%, which is great, especially when Obama said that we're going to have to get used to around 7%. And then actually, after he said that, it dropped a bit, but even under him, but he kind of said that 7% was going to be the new average, and we got down to the 3s. Now, building the border wall, and not just that, but convincing Mexico to deploy troops to help with migrants coming in and stopping human trafficking. Great things there. So that was really cool. He was able to convince them to do that. And then prioritizing targeting gang members, especially MS-13, and all the horrible things that were happening with that. So let's look at the next set. So I'm going to get rid of these and pull up the next set. Withdrawing from the TPP and the bad deals. That's kind of a big theme that President Trump had, was bad deals with other countries and pulling out of those trade deals. And then creating new ones like the USMCA, which is United States, Mexico, Canada Agreement. So, and then being hard on China, which is interesting compared to what we just talked about with Biden saying that they're not competition. Well, we need to be hard on them, and President Trump is doing that. Finally, after all these promises, recognizing Jerusalem as the capital of Israel and putting the U.S. Embassy there, which many presidents have promised, and he's the first one to actually do it. Middle East peace deals. These are quite recent, and I think there's 2 or 3 of them now, and so that's pretty great. Entering North Korea. Some people didn't like this, but that was actually a big thing for him to just walk over into North Korea. I've heard from some people of Korean descent that are Americans say that to them was a big deal, seeing that happen, because they knew people that were part of that conflict. And it's a first step. It's obviously not everything's solved now, but a first step to even just entering that country. Ending the horrible Iranian nuclear deal, which again did not help America at all. And then putting sanctions against Venezuela as they deal with the horrible socialism that's happening there, and the regime issues with Maduro, and please forgive me, I'm forgetting that other guy's name, but the issues they're having there. Next set. 2 regulations cut for every 1 added, that executive order. It's a great idea and may not be always implemented the way it should be, but the idea of it and when it is implemented correctly is great. Every time you want a new regulation, you have to cut 2 previous ones that already exist. Approval time for infrastructure projects is down from 10 years to 2, which of course is great, so more stuff can get done. Legalizing the production of industrial hemp. Good. Supporting free speech on college campuses. This is a huge one for me because that's something I struggled with when I was in college, of dealing with some censorship from some administration, of wanting us to take down our posters that advocated for concealed carry on campus. And they were not a fan of that and tried to have us take it down. And then we ended up bringing it up and we finally got approved for it. So I don't want any college students to have to deal with the horrors of that. And so with him supporting free speech on college campuses, that's a great thing. The federal court appointees, as of me recording this video right now, there are 220 that have been approved of his appointees. So that's great. And then the Supreme Court appointees. I would say Neil Gorsuch was good. Brett Kavanaugh was okay. Amy Coney Barrett was good. In my opinion, none of them were great, but good and okay are much better than some other options. So that is good. Moving on. Withdrawing from the horrible Paris Climate Agreement, where we paid way too much and other countries weren't paying nearly enough, and we were following all these rules while other countries weren't following the rules and taking our money and paying very little. So that was obviously a horrible thing, and I'm very happy we got out of it. And I also don't like the idea of other countries telling us what to do. Let's get out of the UN next. That's what I want, but we're not there yet. Declaring a nationwide public health emergency for the opioid crisis. Good. These are just, things where when you declare like a public health emergency, it's saying, hey, we need to put resources toward this. And so that's a good thing because there were a lot of issues with some doctors prescribing opioids that were not needed and these people getting addicted to these things and it really causing issues. Cutting federal funding to abortions, also a very good thing. School choice, making it a priority. I think that's very good. If it were up to me, we would abolish public education and just have private education. But in a country where we have public education, there needs to be school choice. There needs to be vouchers because then these people that are paying taxes, when they send their kid to a private school, they're paying taxes for nothing. So they need to be able to send their child to a private school when public schools exist. So I am all for school choice, and I'm very happy that he makes that a priority. VA reform. The veterans were not being treated quite properly and they were not receiving good care. And he's reformed that to provide better care, but also make it easier for them to report bad care. And then a federal right to try law. This has been existing in several states for a while now, but he made it at the federal level. So that way, if there's an experimental drug or procedure that you want to try, putting your own life at risk, but it might be worth it to you, you have the right to try it, which I think that should have been a thing all along. And it really surprised me when I heard that this was a new thing, but I'm glad he got it done. All right, so those are all the positive things. There are a couple neutral things that I don't really know how I feel about them. The tariffs on steel and aluminum imports. I've heard conflicting information on these of how it actually is helping American jobs, but I've also heard how it's going to increase the prices of things. So this is one I'm kind of neutral on, where I don't know enough about, honestly, to give my full opinion on it. But it is an accomplishment, something he's done. Creating the U.S. Space Force. This is one I'm kind of iffy on too. I really like the idea of us having a military presence for space, especially as we continue on into the future where space travel becomes more of a common thing. And then, of course, dealing with our satellites and cybersecurity, having the Space Force a part of that. The part where I'm kind of iffy on is, again, it's more spending by the government that might not be needed. And two, could it have just been an extension of the Air Force? I don't know. That's again why I'm at the iffy, kind of neutral on it, because I don't know enough about it. And then same thing with this one. $50 billion for infrastructure in rural America. I don't like the idea of infrastructure being paid for by the government. I like the idea of privatizing all that. But I also don't know a whole lot about this situation, so that's why I'm putting it in the neutral area. And then the last accomplishment I have for him is definitely a negative by me, and that is banning bump stocks. I think that violates the Second Amendment, and I don't like the idea of that. So that is the one negative I have of President Trump's accomplishments. But that's the list of all of his accomplishments. So we've looked at the Biden accomplishments. We've looked at the Trump accomplishments. Now we are going to move on to policy agenda. What these candidates are now pushing for the 2020 through 2024, or 2021 through 2024 presidency, what they would do. So let's go ahead and start with Biden. What would he do? I have the website pulled up here. Joe Biden will build America back better, rebuild the middle class. Is there anything else that you want to pop up? Create a more resilient, sustainable economy. Okay, how will you do all this? So first of all, let's look at how this is set up. This is not easy to get through, and we're not going to go through all of this. Don't worry. We're going to kind of pick a few things that seem like important issues to me. Again, this is not me convincing you to vote for a candidate. This is why I'm voting for the candidate I choose. So what are the ones that stick out to me? So this one says Trump rewards wealth, Biden rewards work. Let's see what that says. We're going to kind of look for bullet points and main things that kind of stick out. For 4 years, Trump has recently pursued the economic agenda, rewards wealth over favors. Okay, that's interesting that he thinks that. President Trump spent the remainder of his first year in office fighting for a 1.5 million tax giveaway primarily for large corporations and the wealthy. Well, we know that's not true because what did we just talk about with the tax cuts just a minute ago? I'm not going to reiterate that, but think about my story. Am I a large corporation? Am I wealthy? No, like I said, at the time I was making $25,000 to $26,000 a year. So, no. Let's see. 83% of Trump's tax giveaway will flow to the top 1%. I don't think that's true. Especially after I see all the people around me that benefited that are definitely not in the top 1% of the country. Okay. Trump's tax proposal and economic growth. Okay, you're allowed to think that. No, you're wrong. While 2020 is brought untold. Okay, so what will you do? Instead, okay, you're not telling me what you're doing. If he succeeds, okay, what are you going to do? Okay, that's what Trump's doing. What are you going to do? Okay, so Biden stops Trump tax giveaway and makes billionaires pay their fair share. So you're going to end the Trump tax cuts. And so I'm going to make less money. Along with all of my coworkers and friends who are definitely lower class and middle class. Interesting. Over the middle. Okay, no, that's, again, I'm lower class and middle class area. And I have a lot of middle class friends that benefited. So he's going to get rid of that. So that's what he wants to do. He wants to remove the tax cuts. Anything else here? Expand the child tax credit. Okay, so the President Trump also did that. So it looks like you're going to do that more. Specific tax cuts for major costs these families face, including tax credits for working families to afford health insurance, tax credits to help working families afford child care, tax credits for those that help working families pay for the cost of caring for an aged loving one, tax credits to help. Okay, so just more tax credits, but also higher taxes. So someone like me who does not have any kids or a wife or anything, no family technically, I have a family, but like not in this sense, I'm just gonna have to pay a lot more money. Okay, let's move on to the next thing. Let's see. This seems to be foreign policy. Foreign policy. Okay, to restore dignified leadership at home, respect leadership on the world stage, advance the security, prosperity, and values of the United States. Okay, how? By taking immediate steps to renew our democracy and alliances, protect our economic. Okay, how? Let's see. Okay. Remake our education system so that a child's opportunity in life isn't determined by their zip code or race. Okay, that sounds good. And you could do that by doing school choice, which we're working on. Reform our criminal justice system to eliminate Okay, wait a second. Restore the Voting Rights Act. Seek. Dedicate great. Okay. End the practice of. Okay. How does any of this have to do with. Am I misunderstanding? I thought this was supposed to be foreign policy. Maybe I'm misunderstanding. Okay, this is foreign and domestic policy. Okay. I misunderstood. Okay. Interesting. So, wants to defend the election system. Some of this doesn't sound so bad, Immediately return to the daily briefings at the White House. I don't know. I don't really want. I don't know. I feel like that's unnecessary, but not harmful, I suppose. Okay, restore moral leadership. Immediately end the horrific practice of separating families at our border and holding immigrant children in for-profit prisons. Who built the cages, Joe? That was a really good quote. Okay. There's a lot behind this. I'm not super well versed in it. I'll just say that I do know that there has to be some type of holding, especially when you're not sure who the actual family is. Okay, this is interesting because he took obviously a big turn on this when he worked under Obama, who was known as the deporter in chief. Order review temporary protective status to vulnerable. Okay, terminate the travel ban against. This is not an actual thing that exists, though. There is no travel ban against people from Muslim majority countries. Just from a list of countries that was created under the Obama administration of these at-risk places that were potential hotspots of, I believe, terror and violence. I might be a little wrong on that, but all right. Asylum policies to raise our target. Okay, so I think we need to work on our citizens before we bring in more people, but. I disagree with that. But that seems fine, and that's something that I know President Trump has also been working on. Reform the ban on torture and restore greater transparency. Include policies and interesting because this did not really happen under this, so don't know what that's really going to do. Not a fan of that. I don't think it's the government's job to talk about things like climate change. It's not the government's job to be a part of that. Have a commitment to science and truth in the government, sure, but does that not already happen? There already is a commitment to science and truth. The thing that I want to know, Mr. Biden, is would you also look at things like the economy and liberties and make sure that's a part of it as well, and make sure liberties are above all of it? Return the phrase nation of immigrants to the mission statement of the citizenship. Okay, that I suppose that's fair, but it's interesting as times change. Are we still a nation of immigrants? Sure. I don't know if that needs to be a part of the state. I don't know. Honestly, I'm not sure. Revitalize our nation's commitment to advancing human rights and democracy around the world. So that is kind of trying to turn other places into democracies and republics rather than just worrying about ourselves. That's interesting. Having taken these central steps to reinforce the democratic foundation, President Biden will organize and host a global summit for democracy to renew the okay, we just talked about that. Interesting. Equip people to succeed. Scrolling. End forever wars. I don't know about that with what he's done in the past, but like we talked about, but who knows? That seems like a good thing to support the military, but oppose war. I don't know if that's how Biden feels. I don't really see that anywhere here, but okay, Iran nuclear deal. I don't think bringing back the Iran nuclear deal would be a good idea. And therefore, I do not support that. Okay, that seems fine, but also what President Trump is working on. Not sure, honestly. I don't have a comment on that because I'm not well enough versed on it. Take steps to demonstrate our commitment to reducing the role of nuclear weapons as he... What does that mean? Believes the sole purpose of the U.S. nuclear arsenal should be deterring. I like the idea of us increasing our nuclear arsenal, being prepared. I do think that's one area where the one thing the government is supposed to do is have a military. As a minarchist, I believe that, we should have the 3 branches of government and the military and a domestic branch of the military, which would be the police, and not really much else. Everything else should be done by the private sector. So I think since nuclear weapons exist, we should have them in our military. Oh boy, the climate crisis. I don't really want to read this. Locking enforceable commitments that will reduce emissions in global shipping. So, regulations. That's what he's saying. That's what enforceable commitments. That's regulations. Pressuring China. Okay, that's good to pressure China, though. The world's largest emitter of carbon. Good. That is true. Stop subsidizing coal exports and outsourcing. I don't really like subsidizing anything, but, Convene a climate world summit to directly engage the leaders of the major carbon-emitting nations of the world to persuade them to join the U.S. in making more ambitious national pledges above and beyond the commitment. So essentially the Paris Accord, except fair, but I doubt it would be. Let's just do what we're going to do. Maybe pressure some other specific ones, but I don't think we need another organization of countries. All right, let's go back. Let's see what else do we want to look at. Ensure the future is made in America. That sounds good. Let's take a look. Again, skimming. Okay. No, again, not true. Tax cuts have been very helpful to helping business here boom. Okay, you're just complaining. You're not actually saying what you would do. Okay, buy American real and make a $400 billion procedural investment. So, wait, well, what does that mean? So you're going to spend a lot of money instead of letting the American people spend money. Retool and revitalize American manufacturers. Okay. So this is a lot of... I don't know. I know when we get to President Trump, you're going to see a little bit of this too, but I don't really like the idea of the government spending more money. Some of this doesn't seem so bad. It's just the way he's going about it. Okay, again, you're just complaining about President Trump. Commit to purchasing tens of billions of dollars of clean vehicles and products to support the expansion of clean energy generation. Other countries should be buying the next... Okay, so I know there's issues with the batteries, and I don't like the idea of you artificially pushing something, let the market take care of it by itself, and eventually, just like we've transitioned from horses to gasoline and diesel cars, that will transition eventually into other types of electric vehicles. But just like we still use horses for transportation, sometimes people will still use gasoline and diesel cars for transportation in a world where it's mostly electric vehicles. But it needs to naturally happen. And so you can't just ban the gas and diesel, which he's not saying here, but we'll get to that in a minute. Commit to purchasing American steel, cement, concrete, building materials, and equipment, and in the process not only help rebuild our crumbling infrastructure and retrofit our buildings, but position our domestic companies to lead in resilient, sustainable production for the future. That sounds fine. Commit to forward purchasing of critical medical supplies and pharmaceuticals, ensuring sufficient stockpiles to weather any crisis, and that America gets the best possible care. Okay. Commit to future purchases in advanced industries like cutting-edge telecommunication. Okay, so this, again, This seems like both of these kind of seem like good ideas in theory, but spending government money, lots of money. Okay. Let's see. Is there much more here? So again, major increases in spending. Infrastructure for educational institutions. I kind of like the idea of saying, hey, private sector, take care of that. Don't pay any taxes, and that way you can flourish and grow and have competition in the private sector, all these private schools. Okay, I'm kind of done with this page. Let's go back. Let's go to another one. Okay, this is not really laid out very well. Let's see. Let's look for something that would be interesting to me. Support educators and students. I'm an educator. Giving them pay and dignity they deserve. I think over time you get the pay and the dignity you deserve. I started with a very low pay. My pay is not huge now, but it has grown because I put in a lot of hard work for it. Let's see. Invest in resources for our schools so students grow into physical and emotional healthy adults. Okay. Again, how about let's leave education up to the private sector, and both of these things will take care of itself. Ensure that, okay, I agree with that. And again, this can be done with school choice. Provide every middle and high school student a path to a successful career. Okay. How are you going to do that? That is kind of up to the school. And I think that's being done a lot with good schools, public and private, but that's up to the school. Start investing in our children at birth. That sounds cool, but what does that mean? All right, let's see. So he's breaking down each one of those. So let's see. Make sure teachers receive competitive wage and benefits. In 2018, public school teachers made 21.4% less than workers with similar education and experience. And public school teachers' average weekly wage hasn't increased since 1996. I think part of that, too, is lack of competition. Kind of bolster the private schools. And that takes care of itself. Invest in teacher mentoring, leadership. And again, you're talking about spending money. Privatize it and it'll take care of itself. Help teachers and other educators pay off their student loans. But see, that's money that they owe the government. I have student loans, and I need to pay them, and I'm paying them, my monthly payments and such. But I don't want them to just be forgiven because that's money I owe, and how's it being paid off then? That's the question. Okay, let's see. Double the number of psychologists, counselors, nurses. Okay, seems fine and all, but again, it should be through the private sector because then you're spending a lot of tax dollars on that. Bring needed support for students and parents into our public schools. Parents are working hard to make. Okay, let's see. It should be done through private schools again. Make sure teachers and students can work and learn in safe and healthy environments. Public school facilities receive a grade of D+ from the civil engineers. In fact, each year the U.S. is underfunding the school infrastructure by $46 billion. I think you're overfunding by however much you're funding them. Abolish public schools. Defeat the National Rifle Association. Why are you going to defeat me? I am the NRA. I am a member, so therefore I am the NRA. How are you going to help teachers and defeat them? I don't understand. In order to make our schools safer. But the NRA is helping make schools safer. They have a whole plan and everything. Parents shouldn't have to worry about whether the kids will come home from school, and students shouldn't have to sacrifice themselves and friends before graduation. Let's see. Biden thinks that arming teachers isn't the answer. Actually, as a teacher, I want to be armed around my students. I want to be able to protect my students and myself from a threat, and the best way to do that is to make sure that I am armed as a teacher. So, pass legislation to make it where every teacher can be armed, and that it is encouraged, and that I can receive proper training. I know how to use a firearm. Not every teacher does. They should receive the training for the ones that don't. And I want to receive the proper training for how to react in these types of scenarios when there is an emergency. And I think if you don't trust someone with a gun, you also shouldn't trust them teaching children with children. So there's none of the like, oh, I don't trust a teacher with a gun. Well, if you don't trust them with a gun, you shouldn't trust them with your kids, and they shouldn't be a teacher. So just make it more difficult to become a teacher and make being armed a part of it. Let's see. He's defeated the NRA twice before. He'll begin by again championing legislation to ban assault weapons. What are assault weapons? And high-capacity magazines. What are high-capacity magazines? Bansi authored in 1994, yes, which was an issue, and required universal background checks to keep guns out of dangerous hands. You know what universal background checks would include? They talk about these types of things, and they don't really talk about what they mean. What a universal background check would be is, let's say, for example, let's say my uncle had a firearm that he wanted to give to me because he doesn't need it anymore, and I don't have a firearm and I want one. I would have to go through a background check for that. And you have to go through all this paperwork, and then they're tracking these things, and I don't like that, and it's unconstitutional. Really, any background checks are unconstitutional, but they exist, and the universal background checks would just make things worse. Invest in healing the trauma that impacts survivors of gun violence in their communities. Oh boy. Investing in all children from birth. Okay, what does this mean? This is one I was interested in. What does this mean? Invest in our schools to eliminate the funding gap between white and non-white districts and rich and poor districts. Okay, what does that have to do with since birth? Teacher diversity. I don't like the idea of trying to improve diversity in something. I think you just hire the people that are the best at the job and most well qualified, and diversity will eventually just happen. Forced diversity is always an issue. Build the best, most innovative schools in the country in our low-income communities and communities of color. Again, let the private sector take care of that. Reinstate the Obama-Biden administration's actions to again, you're talking about diversity. I already talked about that. Just let it happen naturally. Make sure children with disabilities have support to succeed. Okay. Interesting. I don't really have a comment on that other than privatizing schools. So I'm getting kind of bored with this because a lot of my answers are just, this would be solved by privatizing schools. So yeah, let's go back then. All right, next one I think would be interesting to look at, the climate emergency, because there is one phrase here that has been really interesting for Joe Biden. He talked about it at 2 different debates. And is it still here after the 2 debates? Let's see. Okay, I don't know. Let's see. Oh, there it is. Yep, Biden believes the Green New Deal is a crucial framework for meeting the climate challenges we face. It powerfully captures 2 basic truths, which are the core of his plan. The United States urgently needs to embrace greater ambition on an epic scale to meet the scope of this challenge, and 2, our environment and economy are completely and totally connected. So he said at both debates that his deal is not the Green New Deal. And to be honest, it does say, to be fair, a crucial framework for. So what does that mean? Well, you look here. The United States urgently needs to embrace greater ambition on an epic scale to meet the scope of this challenge, and the environment and economy are completely and totally connected. So if we look at the Green New Deal, which I'm not going to pull up, we've heard some things. It includes banning parts of the beef market because of cow farts. It includes getting rid of transatlantic and transpacific flight. It includes, or the flights what am I trying to say? Flights in the like overland. It includes banning gas and diesel cars after a certain year and trying to get the carbon neutral by a certain date. I think these are a little too ambitious and some of them very draconian. So that's all I wanted to go to this page for. Still has stuff up about the Green New Deal. All right, let's look for another one. Again, we're not going to be able to look at all these. The ones I want to see are firearms and COVID are the 2 big ones I want to see. Let's see, where are they? Okay, I'm going to open this one in a new tab. We'll go to that one in a minute. A lot of these are interesting because if you just look at the titles, they're very similar to some of the things that President Trump wants. Okay, let's see. Where is the COVID stuff? Oh, it's one of these big ones. Okay. Let's start with the COVID one. It's going to be interesting because there are going to be, I know, and these two right here are going to be the deal breakers for me. You have this, absolutely, I am not voting for you. And let's see. So testing and tracing, double number of drive-in testing sites, okay. Most of this seems fine. Fully use the, okay. Okay, I guess. Let's see. Talking about social distancing and changing size of gatherings. Right here, this is unconstitutional because you are abridging the right to peaceably assemble if you are restricting the size of any gatherings. Stay-at-home restrictions, also unconstitutional. Let's see. Okay, vaccine. I don't like the idea of making it cost-free because who's going to pay for it? Especially $25 billion plus the actual making of it. It could be, it'd be great if we can make it as cheap as possible. Like I'm sure, if we cut regulations and allow competition, it can probably be as low as $5, if not even lower. But I know President Trump is talking about making it cost-free as well, and I don't like that either. Okay, protecting people at risk, that seems fine. Rebuild and expand the defenses. Let's see, immediately restore the White House National Security Council. Okay, I don't like the idea of bringing in more and more councils and such. And building the government. I want it to shrink. Okay, no, this is a big no-no. No, the WHO is horrible. And we left them. I want us to leave the UN now. I have no idea. Don't have enough to talk about that one. Enough information to talk about that. Maybe. I don't know. I don't like the idea of growing government. Okay, and this one is the deal breaker for me. Implement mask mandate nationwide by working with governors and mayors and by asking the American people to do what they do best, step up in a time of crisis. So how will you do that? Every American, Joe has called on every American to wear a mask when they are around people outside their household. Every governor to make that mandatory in their state. Local authorities to also make it mandatory. So unconstitutional to force people to do that type of stuff. And therefore, I will not wear a mask. I don't. And maybe I'll make a video on why I don't. But it's because of it's unconstitutional to force you to. If you asked me to, maybe I would. But all these places saying you must, well, I'm not going to now because you told me I had to. So right there, deal breaker. Because of that, nope, I will not vote for you, even if that was the only reason, which is not. But if that was the only reason, I'd say, no, I'm not voting for you. All right, let's take a look at the other one that's the deal breaker for me. The firearms situations. Ban the manufacture and sale of assault weapons and high-capacity magazines. What does that mean? I don't know what that means. Regulate possession of existing assault weapons under the National Firearms Act. No. Buy back the assault weapons and high-capacity magazines already in our communities. Yeah, good luck with that. Reduce stockpiling of weapons. No. Require background checks for sale and for all gun sales. Again, I don't like the idea of universal background checks. With very limited exceptions such as gifts between... Okay, so that would cover the uncle example, but what about sales between family members or sales between friends? Again, I don't like these ideas. This is funny. Close other loopholes and federal background check system. In addition to closing the boyfriend loophole, highlighted below, Biden will. There's supposed to be stuff here, but there's nothing here. It's not this, because this is another bullet point under here, I think. Or it's another bullet point under here. But either way, there's supposed to be information here, but there's nothing there. Let's see. Let's keep going down. Let's scroll through. This is a big issue too. How are you going to get ammunition if you cannot buy it online, especially if you live out in the middle of nowhere? Good luck with that. That will never make it. It just won't. It'll immediately be struck down in court if you try. But I don't want you to try because, again, it's unconstitutional and really bad. Let's see. I'm kind of skimming through. Biden will enact legislation to give states and local governments grants to require individuals to obtain license prior to purchasing a gun. I don't like that either. You should not need any form of a license to purchase a gun because it is a right, not a privilege. Maybe I can understand, just like voting is a right, not a privilege. Voting get to show an ID to prove that you're an American citizen. Maybe, and that you only vote once, but you can purchase as many guns as you want. There's no limit on that. But maybe you can say, oh, you have to show ID to show that you are a U.S. citizen and you have this right. I don't know. But they're God-given rights, protected by the government. So I don't know. Adequately fund the background check system. Again, background checks are unconstitutional. Okay, let's see. This is domestic violence stuff. Okay, no, I don't like this either. Smart guns. Today we have the technology to allow only authorized users to fire a gun. For example, existing smart gun technology requires fingerprint match before use. How many fingerprints can you have set to it? What if, I need to use a weapon that belongs to my dad, or my sister needs to use a weapon that belongs to me? This is not good because then, or what if, I have to use a different hand? Obviously, multiple fingerprints and stuff. What if I'm not holding it exactly right? I don't want another point of failure. I need the firearm to work immediately in my time of need. Otherwise, there's no point in having it. Okay, let's see. Hold adults accountable for giving minors access to firearms. That just sounds like, kind of common sense. And I think this would already be a thing. Every gun owner and you talk to in the NRA, they also talk to how to teach children to work with these types of items properly and safely. So, requiring gun owners to safely store their weapons. What does that mean? Does that mean you can't have guns on gun racks? Because that would be an issue. Let's see. Okay. Straw purchasers. Buy a firearm on behalf of an individual who cannot pass a background check. That does sound illegal, but again, background checks are unconstitutional. Okay, one way people who cannot legally obtain a gun may gain access to a weapon is by assembling one on their own, either buying a kit of assembled gun parts or 3D printing a working firearm. We'll stop this. So I don't like this because 3D printing code, that's protected under the First Amendment to share this code. And obviously being able to build your own gun and being able to buy these guns, download these guns, whatever, protected under the Second Amendment. So there should not be any restrictions at all. Reform, fund, and empower the U.S. Justice Department to enforce our gun laws. Let's see. Direct the ATF. Right there, that's a problem because we shouldn't have the ATF. It does not need to exist. To issue an annual report on firearms trafficking. Okay. Prohibit the use of federal funds to arm or train educators to discharge firearms. Okay, funnily enough, this sounds like I would agree with that. If we prohibit the use of federal funds for educators, end it there. Because private education. Get rid of public education. But if public education does exist, then we need to be arming and training the educators. They need to be armed in the classroom if there's public education. Private education is up to the private employers, and I do think that the private educators should also be armed, but that would be up to their employers. I think if public education exists, then yes, they need to be armed. The teachers do. Okay. Address the epidemic of suicides by firearms. That statement right there sounds like a good statement. Must address suicides. That sounds good. I don't know what you mean by that, but if you're just saying help people that have issues with suicide and depression, I'm on board with that, helping them. Let's see. Okay, so again, this page, most of it, like 95% of it, deal breakers for me. Now, there is one other thing I want to look at before we hop over to the Trump policy agenda, or I think we're doing Joe Jorgensen next and then Trump. But so yeah, deal breakers for me were the mask mandate and pretty much everything on this page. Absolutely will not vote for him. So let's go to any random one of these. Let's do this one. I want to show you something interesting. We're going to hop real quick over to the Trump one, and I'm going to do Control F, Biden. We're going to ignore the ads on the side, obviously. So we see one here, and that's in his opening paragraph. One at the end, which is actually talking about the next article, and the rest are ads. Or I don't know if you call them ads, other news. So in the actual article, Biden is mentioned once on his second term agenda. Let's go over to the Biden page and see how many times Trump is mentioned. 4 times here. So, okay, he talks about him here. And this is on one policy page. Let's go back and let's look at another policy page. Let's do this one. And do it again. Control F, Trump. Oh, where did those letters come from? 36 times on this page. How many times was it on the Trump one? Once. And let's be fair, like we did with the Trump one, it was really 9, but only one of them was an actual article. Out of the 36, let's see how many are in the actual article. Let's go through. Okay, so far 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay. Quite a few of these. Okay, more than half of them. Oh, maybe all of them. Let's see. Every single one of them. So, on the Trump page, with all of his policies, one mention of Joe Biden, and that is in his opening paragraph. On the Biden page, just on the immigration ban, 36 mentions. So that kind of tells you what you may have been hearing, that there is no support for Joe Biden. It's all just anti-Trump. You are either voting for Trump or you are not voting for him. That is really what this election is, and this, I think, kind of proves it. With that said, let's go with the actual third option. If you're not voting for Trump or not voting for Trump, you might be looking at Joe Jorgensen. So let's look at her policies. Again, we're not going to look at all of them. Let's look at her vision for our future. So she says, generations of Republican and Democrat politicians have failed the people of America. Together, they've given us over $26 trillion in debt, trillion-dollar deficits, plus trillions more in unfunded liabilities, nonstop involvement in expensive and deadly foreign war, skyrocketing healthcare costs, the highest imprisonment rate in the world. So all this, a broken retirement system, tariffs, energy policies, special interests, all that's saying stuff. Let's see what you would actually do. Let's look at COVID-19. We must reduce red tape and regulate. Okay, I would agree with that. Let's take a look. Let's learn more. Risen to the occasion. Unfortunately, the federal government cannot. Okay, so what are you going to do about it? Okay, the testing. One American. Okay. Okay, there's more. For a second, I thought this was it. I was like, that's not good. Again, this is not very well organized to try if I want to find out stuff quick. I like details. That's true. But also to find your stance on things, this is kind of difficult. I will get rid of the efficacy requirement with the FDA. If not that, okay, I like the idea of getting rid of the FDA. But let's see. multi-trillion-dollar bailouts aren't going to create American jobs or reopen businesses that have been permanently shuttered. That's true. When I'm president, I will make sure that the federal government does not bungle and worsen a situation like this ever again. We must reduce red tape and regulations so that medicine and treatments, as well as testing, can get to patients at all times, particularly in the most dire of times. Okay, that sounds good. Let's go on to healthcare. Let's see, what would you do? Again, I'm going to kind of skip ahead to see what we can get to. FDA is also a problem, I agree. But you're saying also, so what did you cover before that? There's absolutely no reason for patients to shop for better prices. As a result, healthcare providers have no reason to compete. Insurance companies can charge higher prices without any accountability, and we're the ones footing the bill. Okay, so a lot of complaining. What are you going to do? Hire president will get rid of the FDA's. Okay, we already talked about that. Okay. Government spending. Tax cuts are important, but they are rendered useless if we do not also address the out-of-control spending. Okay, I agree with that. My plans to cut government spending reach across my entire agenda, whether it's in healthcare, military, criminal justice, or education. Okay. Comes to cutting spending, we cannot take any solutions off the table. I would encourage baseline budgeting. Instead of assuming an increase, we start at 0 every year, and then we decide what is vital. Interesting. I would eliminate all departments or executive agencies which are not necessary, and from there are plenty of them. I agree. For those remaining, I'll give each cabinet secretary a specific spending reduction target to meet each. Okay, that sounds like a great idea. Okay, let's go on to environment. President and Congress should provide a roadmap and not a mandate upon our economy. Okay, that sounds reasonable. Perhaps the most important aspect of libertarian environmental solution is not being in the business of picking winners and losers. The federal government gives about $15 billion annually to oil and coal companies. Okay, I agree of getting rid of subsidies, if that seems to be what you're talking about. As president, I will return to each state some of the many responsibilities. Okay, so put it to the states and local communities. That's a good idea. Whether it be trains, planes, automobiles, or energy, the federal government should not play favorites in any sector. Okay. My White House will bridge the divide that we currently see between fiscal responsibility and environmental conservation. I will show Americans who are deeply concerned about the environment that protecting it does not require taking on crippling debt. We can have both a thriving economy and an environment that is clean and safe. Okay, I agree. I don't think the government needs to do anything with it, but Social Security. Let's see. Okay, let's get down to that, because it seems like the bottom is really where she's saying what she's actually going to do, and she stops complaining. Okay. I look forward to fighting for Social Security in spite of those career politics. Okay. I will work with Congress to enact a plan like the Cato Institute's 6.2% solution. Do you want to put it in the private accounts? That's what I would want. The employer-paid portion of Social Security tax can be used to fund the transition into new system and fund payments for disability and survivor payments. The next president owes it to the American people. Real solution. Other countries. Okay. Not much information I'm getting from there. Immigration. So I was reading this earlier, and she's just talking about dismantling tariffs for free trade, which, again, I said I'm not super well versed on tariffs, so I don't have much of an opinion there. What she's making kind of makes sense. But what I don't like is it also seems like she's pushing, her wording makes it seem like she wants open borders, which is my biggest gripe with her, and the reason why I choose not to vote for her. I don't like the idea of open border, but this is funny here. Much as with trade, the two major parties are the same. The Republican president has constantly demonized immigrants and made every effort to stop legal immigration. I disagree. I don't think he has. But his Democratic challenger was second in command of an administration which deported more people than any other in American history. So that's just kind of funny. Moving on to criminal justice. Let us see. She's talking about We don't have a drug problem. We have a prohibition problem. So I kind of agree. I've given up my idea to deal with the drug problem in a previous video, but just to quickly reiterate, make it child abuse to be under the influence of or using any type of drug around children, and this includes alcohol. I don't think it's an issue to be using alcohol, but to be inebriated around children, I think should be child abuse. I also think smoking, even just cigarettes around children, should be considered child abuse. And of course, using any of these types of drugs around children and being under the influence of them around children should be considered child abuse. And I don't think you should be using these things, including smoking, on public property. But then I think decriminalize it on their own private property. That's my quick, really fast policy on what I think with drugs. And then people can hurt themselves if they want to, but they can't hurt children. Let's see. I will defund federal involvement in policing. I will defund the DEA and keep federal agencies out of local police matters unless calls upon by state authorities. We'll end civil asset forfeiture. Okay, I like the idea of ending civil asset forfeiture prior to conviction. That's a good idea. But I will defund federal involvement in policing and unless it's called upon by state authorities. Sometimes you have to get in the situation because the state is not doing their job. And no-knock raids. Okay, I can understand that. End up killing innocent bystander. It's interesting because we find out later on that she was not an innocent bystander. We could look forward to that story another time, but interesting. And qualified immunity so that good citizens can take legal action against police brutality. Okay, that seems fine. Drug offenders now in prison who have harmed no one will be free to go home to their families. Well, this is one thing I forgot to mention in the Trump accomplishments was the First Steps Act and how he worked to work on prison reform and is being praised a lot for it. So that's one thing he's trying to help too, which is the exact opposite of the Biden 1994 crime bill. All right, poverty. Skip to the end again to see what her stance is. While housing policy is largely decided on the state and local level, I'll work with governors and mayors to undo harmful zoning policies and red tape that makes it harder for people to own homes and raise families. I'll eliminate the Federal Department of HUD. Yeah, I like the idea of eliminating HUD. Only to reinforce inequality and federal failures in housing. I'm not sure exactly. I just don't like the idea of all these government programs and government organizations and cabinet positions that are unneeded. We must take a good look at what policies actually work and which ones don't. Okay, taxes. Taxes are never voluntary. I agree. Taxation is theft. They are always paid under threat of punishment. If you fail to pay what the government says you owe, you can be fined, have your wages garnished, assets seized, even go to prison. That is why taxation is theft. Let's see. From our founding until 1916, our economy and nation thrived without an income tax or the IRS. As president, I will work tirelessly to slash federal spending, make government much, much smaller, and eliminate the federal income tax so you can keep what you earn. I like that. Education. Let's see. What do you want to do? Government has failed young people, but no more than an education. As president, I'll work to end the Department of Education. I like that idea. Leave it up to the states and encourage states to eliminate regulations that stifle innovation in education, including state-mandated textbooks, curricula, and testing. A minimum number of days. I think that's a good start. But privatizing is better. Neutrality and peace. National defense means defending our nation, our country, the United States of America. Military self-defense for America is good and necessary thing. Our country could not exist without it. Let's see. Skip down to the bottom again. Imperial Japan and Great Wall China a few centuries ago were isolationists. They kept out of foreign wars, but they also blockaded foreign trade and foreign travel by force of law, by the power of their governments. They cut off and insulated their people from all commerce and relations with outsiders. Isolationism made their society stagnant and weak and ignorant. Okay, Switzerland is non-interventionist, free and open trade, but no military interventionism in the conflicts and wars of foreign countries. Joe Jorgensen for President 2020, non-interventionist foreign policy can turn America into one giant Switzerland, armed and neutral with peaceful, free, and open trade and travel, an America for a greater freedom, and America at peace with the world. I like the idea of some isolationism, but I feel like this might go a little too far. And that's actually the end. We've cycled through all of her issues, all of her policy agenda. But for me, it's the hinting towards open borders and the a little too strong on isolationism that are kind of a little iffy for me. And also I don't think it's worth voting for a third-party candidate until they're up on the debate stage. If they can make it up on the debate stage with the two main party candidates, then by all means throw your vote at them and try and make them win. But at this point, it's tough to vote for somebody who a lot of people in America have no idea who they are, and they're not going to see their name at all until for the first time when they're looking at a ballot. So let's move on to Trump's policy agenda. I like this website. It's very simple. And we can actually hit all of his policies because of the way he has it set up. Real quick. Jobs. Create 10 million new jobs in 10 months. Create 1 million new small businesses. Cut taxes to boost take-home pay and keep jobs in America. Enact fair trade deals that protect American jobs. Made in America tax credits. Expand opportunity zones. Continue deregulatory agenda for energy independence. All of that sounds very good. And now, how are you going to do this? Well, 1, recovering from COVID, and 2, there's the answer. So, eradicate COVID-19. Develop a vaccine by the end of 2020. Don't know if that's going to happen, but it seems like it's on track, so I'd say it's very plausible. Not just possible, but very plausible that will happen. And if it does, return to normal in 2021. Great. Make all critical medicines and supplies for healthcare workers in the United States. Let me read that again. Make all critical medicines and supplies for healthcare workers. Okay, you make them in the United States. Okay, good. Refill stockpiles to prepare for future pandemics, obviously. End our reliance on China. Great. Bring back 1 million manufacturing jobs from China. That would be fantastic. Tax credits for companies that bring back jobs from China. Okay. Allow 100% expensing deductions for essential industries like pharmaceuticals and robotics who bring back their manufacturing to the United States. Okay, it kind of ties in with the one before. No federal contracts for companies who outsource to China. Sounds like a great idea. Hold China fully accountable for allowing the virus to spread around the world. Also seems like a great thing. Healthcare. Cut prescription drug prices. Sounds good. And how is he going to do this? We didn't talk about it, but he's talked about this. We're cutting out the middleman, and it's something that he's been actually working on doing and being quite successful in, of cutting out the middleman and trying to make it so that way we get the same prices that some of the other countries get that have lower prices. Put patients and doctors back in charge of our healthcare system. Okay, good. Lower healthcare insurance premiums. Good, and that could be done by getting rid of a lot of the Obamacare stuff. End surprise billings. Good, yeah, obviously. Cover all pre-existing conditions. This is where him and I disagree on something. I don't like the idea of making it mandatory that all pre-existing conditions are covered. Now, I can kind of maybe understand. It seems like what they're pushing towards, though, is don't charge people extra for pre-existing condition. I don't think that's right. Maybe you could say, okay, a company shouldn't have to cover you if you have, shouldn't be able to turn you away if you have a pre-existing condition, but they should be able to charge you more, because just like, if you have a trampoline at your house, or if you have a pool at your house, you have to pay more for homeowners insurance and for all these liability insurances because you're a liability at that point. So if you have a pre-existing condition, you're obviously a liability, and so you should be able to be charged more. As unfortunate as it is, it makes sense, and that's, I think, how it has to be. Protect Social Security and Medicare. I like the idea of getting rid of Medicare, and so people can just get private insurance, and putting Social Security in a private account. But sure, protecting them as they transfer over would be great. Protect our veterans and provide world-class healthcare and services. That sounds good. I think if there's going to ever be government healthcare, it should only be for veterans, because they serve the country. That's like their reward. That sounds weird to say, their reward, but it's like something that, thank you for your service, for serving our country. We need to take care of you because of it. That's a much better wording and better portrays what I mean. Education. Provide school choice to every child in America. Yes. Teach American exceptionalism. Yes. That unless you're completely privatizing education, this is all that really needs to be done on the education front. Maybe the whole thing I said earlier with the Army and teachers is a good thing to add too, but that can be done at the local level. This is at the national level is great. School choice, like I talked about, so that way you can choose which school you want your child to go to, whether it be a charter school, a private school, or the different public school, that your tax dollars follow you to that place since you're paying for them. And teach American exceptionalism. We need to make sure that these kids understand the true history of the United States and understand how we are a great country and the mistakes we've made in the past and how we've overcome them in positive ways. Drain the swamp. Pass congressional term limits. Yes, I like that. And bureaucratic government bullying of U.S. citizens and small businesses. Good. Expose Washington's money trail and delegate powers back to the people and states. Good. And drain the globalist swamp by taking out international organizations that hurt American citizens. Yes. Do you know what would be the best one to start with? The UN. Let's get out of the UN. Defend our police. Fully fund and hire more police and law enforcement officers. I agree. I think they need more funding, not defunded, because this is an actual legitimate part of the government that can receive funding. I think abolishing the police makes sense only if you're going to replace it with a domestic branch of military. But in this case, yes, they need more training. That's the thing. If you want to stop all these issues that are happening, more training is what's needed. Increase criminal penalties for assault of a law enforcement officer. That sounds fine. Prosecute drive-by shootings of acts of domestic terrorism. I don't necessarily know if that's needed, but not a bad thing necessarily, obviously. Bring violent extremist groups like Antifa to justice. Absolutely. End cashless bail and keep dangerous criminals locked up until trial. I don't know enough about it to have an opinion on that one. Block illegal immigrants from becoming eligible for taxpayer fund. Oh, sorry. Next area. End illegal immigration and protect American workers. Okay. Block illegal immigrants from becoming eligible for taxpayer-funded welfare, healthcare, and free college tuition. Agree. Mandatory deporting of non-citizen gang members. Agree. Dismantle human trafficking networks. Completely agree. This is something that he's been doing great on, that the media has not reported on it at all. President Trump has been doing an awesome job of tackling human trafficking. End sanctuary cities to restore our neighborhoods and protect our families. Agree 100%. Prohibit American companies from replacing United States citizens with lower-cost foreign workers. I agree. That's actually something that in the past Joe Biden has agreed with too, and it's something that he pushed on, saying that he funded the border wall. He wanted, or not border wall at that time, the border fence. And he wanted to make sure that there was a good fence at the border. And he wanted to make sure that there were penalties for companies that were hiring illegal immigrant workers instead of American workers. And obviously he doesn't feel that way anymore, or he's being pressured to not feel that way anymore, because that's what President Trump thinks. Again, Biden is just anti-Trump, with no real policy for himself other than what the far left is pushing on him, like the new Green Deal and all the anti-gun stuff. Require new immigrants. Well, I guess he's always been anti-gun if you look at the 1993 bill we talked about earlier. Require new immigrants to be able to support themselves financially. I like that idea. Yes, if you want to come to the United States, you need to be able to prove that you can work and you are not going to be reliant on government programs. I like that. Innovate for the future. Launch Space Force, establish permanent manned presence on the moon, and send the first manned mission to Mars. Cool. I've already talked about Space Force and my opinions on that, and how I'm kind of iffy. I'm not entirely sure. I like the idea of it, but maybe the implementation could be different, but I don't know enough about it to have a true opinion. So there's that. Permanent manned presence on the moon. That would be really cool. I like that idea. Send the first manned mission to Mars. Awesome. Build the world's greatest infrastructure system. So this is one where, again, I think infrastructure should be done by the private sector, maybe encouraging the private sector. Cool. But using government funds on it, not so sure. Win the race to 5G and establish a national high-speed wireless internet network. Cool. Continue to lead the world in access to the cleanest drinking water and cleanest air. Yes. And see, this is the whole environmental part right there. It's about the clean drinking water and clean air. Having clean stuff around you. And cleaning up it's about the cleanliness. Not focusing on the global warming aspect, which we can't change much on, but worrying about what we can control. Cleanliness. And without breaking the economy either, with draconian restrictions and regulations. Stop endless war. Okay, Americans' first foreign policy. Stop endless wars and bring our troops home. Excellent. I like President Trump because he has 100% respect for the military and supports the military while opposing war. I like that when you're pro-military, anti-war. Get allies to pay their fair share. Yes, agree 100%. Maintain the Paris Accord. Remember, they were not paying all the disproportionate paying and people not following the rules properly, and China was being let free on all this type of stuff they were doing. And then look at the trade deals that we've had and deals with the I forget the name of them, but there was the one with the North American countries and the one with the European countries, and people not paying their fair share for the amount of protection they're getting from us. Can't have that, so got to make them pay their fair share. Maintain and expand America's unrivaled military strength. Good. I don't know how much expanding we need to do. I just think updating to keep with the times is good. Wipe out global terrorists who threaten to harm Americans. Yes, I agree. Build a great cybersecurity defense system and missile defense system. Good. Because, defense is the most important part of the military. Defend American values. And this is the last section. Continue nominating constitutionalist Supreme Court and lower court judges. Excellent. We talked about this before, how these were great things. Protect unborn life through every means available. Agree. Very good. Defend the freedoms of religious believers and organizations. Agree. Very good. And support the exercise of the Second Amendment rights. Very good. So this is all just Constitution. That's what that is. Protection of life, liberty, and through that, the pursuit of happiness and property. And then, of course, just doing what the Constitution says. So, and protecting it. So, great. All of these are very good. And with this one, it's interesting because Joe Biden has still yet to give a straight answer on if he would pack the Supreme Court. And to me, that's scary. Because, and then they were saying that, President Trump shouldn't do this with the nominating Amy Coney Barrett. But then you look and the Constitution says that it says in there, it's a shall statement. The president shall, and I don't have the Constitution next to me. Let's pull it up. U.S. Constitution. We're going to look at the phrase right here, live. Okay. Here we go. I believe it's Article 2, Section... I don't remember what section. Okay. He shall have power by and with so Section 2, and the consent of the Senate to make treaties, provide 2/3 of the Senate present occur. And he shall nominate, and by with the advice and consent of the Senate, shall appoint ambassadors, other public ministers, consuls, judges of the Supreme Court, and all other officers of the United States whose appointments are not herein otherwise provided for, and which shall be established by law. But the Congress may by law vest the appointment of such inferior offices as they think proper in the President alone, in the courts of law, or in the heads of the departments. So, he shall nominate judges of the Supreme Court. And with the advice and consent of the Senate. So, to appoint. Shall appoint. So, he has to nominate. He shall nominate. That's what he did. He's following the Constitution. With advice and consent of the Senate, shall appoint. So, with the advice and consent of the Senate, they appointed. And they're like, oh, well, if Merrick Garland, it was during an election year, and that's why. No, that wasn't why. It was because the Senate did not give the advice and the consent that they agreed. Well, the Senate this time did. And they're upset because, again, he's following the Constitution. So, with that, I just kind of want to end the video with one last little section, and that is the policies that I would like to see. So there's really three main ones that we're going to go over. That are, I put these as plausible policies because there's, of course, I'd love to abolish all of this, all of these government cabinet positions and executive positions and executive areas that do not need to be there, and just shrink the government a bunch, but they're not very plausible. These are three things that I think are very plausible and can be done if we really put the pedal to the metal and everybody would come together on it. The first one is repeal the 16th Amendment and abolish federal income taxes, abolish the IRS, and maybe implement a federal sales tax to replace it, or maybe not. So, all with taxes, getting rid of federal income taxes completely. Firearms, abolish the ATF. Repeal the machine gun ban. That was, I think, 1986. The Hyde Amendment, I think it was called. I will double check that while I continue reading. And pass nationwide stand your ground law. Okay, Hyde Amendment is a legislative provision barring the use of federal funds. Okay, no, that's not at all what I was thinking. Hyde Amendment, what was it? That was the good one. What am I thinking of? I think it started with an H. It was part of the Firearms Owner Protection Act, which had some good stuff in it. The Hughes Amendment. I knew it started with an H. Hughes Amendment. Yes, the Hughes Amendment called for the banning of machine guns. It was 1986. And it was any machine gun manufactured before 1986 you can own, but anyone after 1986 is illegal. So, of course, they went up in price because they stopped manufacturing them for civilians, and civilians can no longer buy them, so the higher demand. I think repeal the Hughes Amendment. Pass nationwide stand your ground law and national concealed carry reciprocity. So, just like I have my driver's license from Florida, I can use it in all 50 states. I should be able to do the same thing with my concealed carry permit from Florida. Use it in all 50 states. And lastly, the third plausible policy I would like to see was outlined in President Trump's plan. Hopefully he actually does it. Is congressional term limits. He didn't say exactly what they would be. My idea is 6 terms in the House, which would be 12 years, and 2 terms in the Senate, which would be 12 years. That way you cannot be in Congress for longer than 24 years. Maybe you want to do your 6 terms in the House and then 2 years in the Senate and then run for president for 8 years. We're up to 32 years now, and you're done in politics unless you want to be going to a lower position, which most people wouldn't, or you maybe Supreme Court. I think Taft did that. Did Taft do that? Let me check. Taft. Yes, he was the only person to have held both offices, president and Supreme Court justice. So that's what I would want, is 6 terms in the House, 2 terms in the Senate, and of course 2 terms for presidency. I think that would be the best way to go about it. Well, with that, we've covered everything, and with this, it's my official endorsement of President Trump for re-election. I think Jo Jorgensen has a lot of good stuff, but I don't think she's a viable candidate. And also, there's a couple things that I'm not on board with, where I'd say 99% of President Trump's policy I am on board with, and 99% of Biden's policy I am not on board with. So 99 positive for Trump, maybe 95 positive for Jo Jorgensen, but not viable, and 1% positive for Biden. So therefore, I endorse President Trump for re-election, and I will be voting for President Trump for re-election. Anyway, thanks for checking out the video. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see y'all later.